the things that you are desiring you too. Like, you are a magnet for those things and they are looking for you too. Like, don't give up on those manifestations. Don't give up on those dreams. The how is not your job. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. I'm Lindsay Tanner. I usually provide things like yoga flows and meditations, and sometimes talk videos like this where we just discuss what it means to live your most aligning life. And a lot of this comes from my podcast that I've had for over 2 years now, like 2.5 years, which is crazy. I will link it in the show notes if you're interested. It's called Alignment Adventures. But today I want to come to you with a very cathartic topic, and I'm doing this mostly to celebrate and commemorate the ending of a huge chapter in the library of Lindsay's life. If you imagine your life like a bookshelf, or probably more like a library, I guess this would be more than a chapter. This would be a book in the library of my life, and that is my time here in Arizona. So just to update you all, if you're not familiar, again, I will link the podcast episode where we talk about a lot of this. But I've been living in Phoenix, Arizona the last 6 years. The first year on my own. Then my boyfriend at the time, now husband, joined me, and we've been living in Phoenix, Arizona. And last year we had our son, and next month we are quitting our jobs. We are moving into an RV full-time to travel around the U.S. for around 6 to 8 months, I would guess. And then after that, I have literally no idea what we're going to do with our life. We have some potentials, but nothing is solidified. We are completely open to seeing what happens and what the universe brings us. So with that, I wanted to come on here and make a video talking about making big decisions, doing scary things, following your intuition, all things that I've talked about on here before, but I just really want to relate it all to this topic and 2 very massive decisions I've made, one 6 years ago and one that is happening right now, and how I'm navigating those and how they came to be, and just kind of take you through the whole story. So if you haven't already, go ahead and just find a comfy spot with me, get a favorite drink. I usually have coffee or some kind of warm beverage. Right now I just have water because I've been sick the past month. I don't know what my deal is. Some kind of sinus stuff. I'm sure it's something to do with energetics and my body's trying to communicate with me. And just find a comfy seat as I take you through the story of how I got to Arizona, how I made that massive, scary, intuitive decision, and then the massive decision we're making now. So let's rewind a little bit. Let's go back to, March 2017. So a little over 6 years ago. I remember the moment so clearly. I think things were building up to it. So at the time I was living in central Illinois, specifically Springfield, Illinois. That is where I was born, where I've grown up, in that area, all that I've known. Basically, I traveled some, but I'd lived there my whole life. And we had just gotten back from a trip down to Florida. My dad lives part-time in Fort Myers, Florida. And spring in the Midwest, if you're unfamiliar, can be very sporadic. You can have really beautiful days. You can have horrible, snowy, cold days. And I remember we had just come back from that trip, and it just dawned on me, why do I choose to live here? Which I think I've always had that secret desire to go and move somewhere by myself. But that was the first tiny seed. So then I'm going along with my life. I'm teaching at a school at the time that I've been at for, I think, 3 or 4 years. 4 years because I student taught there, but 3 years actually teaching. So I'm very comfortable in what I'm doing. My family all lives there. Live a very comfortable life. Oh, and Stephen had just moved to the same town that I was living in. Up until that point, we had been dating, I guess, 2-ish years. And we have been doing long distance, and he just moved to the town that I lived in. So we finally lived in the same town. And I remember the day so clearly. We were just sitting in my living room. It was after work. We were just hanging out, probably having dinner. And it was just an intuitive hit to check teaching jobs online, just to look, just to see what's out there. I've known some people that have moved, actually quite a few people that have moved to Arizona specifically to be teachers, and a lot of those people I've reconnected with now. It's very synchronistic how it all works out. So anyways, I look up jobs on like the job portal. There was like a specific Arizona teaching job portal at the time, which I don't even know if that still exists. Anyways, I remember looking specifically for what I was certified to teach, which was middle school science and high school science. And there were so many jobs. Mind you, I had no idea what the educational climate was like in Arizona at the time, which if you're familiar, there's been a lot of like political things going on. But let's just be honest, that is a field that is completely underserviced, and that's a whole rabbit hole we can go down, right? Like things we could do for education. So anyways, there were so many jobs. And that night, I spent all night just applying for jobs. Like I decided to look, I looked, saw that there were so many jobs, decided to apply, and just like spent all night applying for different jobs. I'm trying to remember all the specific details, but it happened pretty quickly within the next month. By like mid to end April, I had interviewed at a school, actually a couple of schools, and accepted a job. And it ended up being the school out of all the schools I applied for, and ended up being the school that a bunch of girls that I knew from college that were in my sorority were also teaching at. I think I ended up knowing that at some point, but I didn't know that right away. So again, synchronicities, flow of the universe. You can see in the story how things are just like flowing right along, right? So I get the job and I'm like, holy SHIT, I'm moving to Arizona. Like the emotional roller coasters of up and down, like when you make a big decision, of course, it feels so intuitively aligned. So that's like a point I want to make with this story. When you feel that intuitive hit and you're like, yes, I need to do this, it's not high vibe all the time. Like you can feel it in your soul, in your bones, in your core, in your gut, but there are still times where you're like freaking out and you're like, holy moly, I cannot believe this is happening. I was going to move away from everyone that I knew, including my boyfriend at the time. Like he had just gotten a job. So he supported all this. He was like, you should do this. I'll move out like sometime later. I think at the time we said like maybe 6 months to a year. Ended up being a whole year later, but he was very supportive. And I was like, okay, I'm moving to Arizona by myself. So I booked a trip with my girlfriends. We came out here. We found an apartment, which is a whole nother story. Synchronistically found the perfect apartment that I could live in. And I moved out here July 2017. Such a crazy experience, like just driving out here. I want to like insert some clips and some pictures of the move out here. Stephen helped me move out and we just drove out here. And I want to say too, before my visit to Arizona, I'd never been here before. So I decided to move to a place I had never actually physically been there before. That's how strong this urge was. So I tell this story to just like shed some light. Maybe you've had experiences like this where you've gotten an intuitive hit to do something so strong and it doesn't really make logical sense, but it flows and it feels right. Just look for things like that. A thing that I keep thinking about recently, and this was a good example of that, and this was way before I had my podcast or was really into like the spiritual stuff that I'm into now. But a quote that I keep thinking about recently is let life flow through you. Things come to us, ideas, opportunities, synchronicities, and sometimes we block them or we doubt ourselves or we self-sabotage. Let life flow through you. Allow life to flow through you. Just bring some awareness to that and think about any things that you may be blocking in your reality. So that first year in Arizona was wild. I remember blaring the song from Trolls. Trolls must have just come out, which I love that movie. It's so colorful, so cute. Has Justin Timberlake in it, all the things I love. But it's like a song about her like going on her own to save her friends, and like she just has to keep getting back up. And I'll insert a clip somewhere. But I remember the day that we moved in, which was wild. I'd never been to Arizona before. We moved in the middle of summer. I was on the 3rd floor and we didn't have movers and there wasn't an elevator. If you're familiar with this area, like you're nuts, because we had to carry my furniture up 3 flights of stairs in the middle of the summer. Like it was 90 degrees at night. So during the day it was like 117 or something crazy. But Steven and I did it. Again, you can like do crazy hard things when that's your only option. You're just trying to figure it out. And again, letting life flow through you. So that back to that first year was wild, and I learned so many things. This video is really meant to complement a podcast episode that is coming out soon with all my life lessons that I've learned in the last 6 years. So I will link that here. This is more just telling the story and how to like navigate doing scary, hard things. But I remember that first year, just such an emotional roller coaster of like, yes, this is amazing. I love it out here. And also moments of, I don't want to say regret, like I never regretted it, but definitely moments of sadness, of loneliness. I used to call them the Sunday saddies, and I would always go to Target on Sundays because that is something I did at home, and it just made me feel like I was at home. And Targets are pretty like universal. If you're in one Target, I mean, it might be a little bit different in the way they're set up, but if you go in one, it just makes you feel like you're in the Target that you've always gone to. So I would always go to Target on Sundays because I would always get a little sad on Sundays. But I made it through, and I'm so grateful for that year by myself. Obviously, I'm even more grateful that Steven did join me. A lot of people that year were like, don't be surprised if Steven doesn't come out or if this doesn't work out. And, I was just very confident, obviously, in our relationship and very confident in the decision that I had made. And I'm very grateful for that time. Obviously, if you've done long distance is never easy or simple. But I'm grateful that our relationship did navigate through that because I think it made us stronger in so many ways. So then that first year went by and Steven came out, and then we've been just kind of exploring the Southwest these past 5 years. So I was never a camper before moving out to Arizona. Like, if you've ever camped in the Midwest, it can be rainy a lot of times or humid, but camping in the Southwest is a completely different experience. So if you don't like camping and you've camped like in the Midwest or somewhere like that, just give it a try out in Arizona or in one of these Southwest states because it's just beautiful out here. Like, really not that many bugs. I mean, there may be other pests. We've just always gotten really lucky, maybe, knock on wood, with our camping experience in pests and bugs. Like, it's not super buggy. Obviously, it's not humid. It's very dry here. Beautiful scenery, beautiful weather. The sky is just stunning. I'm going to insert a picture of the sky, which I don't even know if I got a picture of the night sky. It might be just sunset when we were at the Grand Canyon camping. I had never seen such a beautiful night sky before. I remember going outside the tent, which, by the way, that's how we camped at first, was just tent camping outside in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and looking up and just being in awe, being in so much awe of nature and that beautiful night sky. So over those next 5 years in Arizona, I really fell in love with camping, and I have Steven to thank for that and Arizona to thank for that. And I just love camping and being out in nature. So another thing that has happened, and this is leading me up to our next major life decision that I've already told you about, but like, how do we get to that next life decision? How do you go from living in Arizona to quitting your jobs and living in an RV? That is what I'm explaining. So actually, between my first year and second year in Arizona and when Steven was about to move out here, we took a trip in a van. I had no idea what van life was at the time, but we took a trip in a van, lived in a van full time throughout Iceland. So we did the ring road in Iceland, and that was really before I feel like Iceland blew up like it did, or maybe I just wasn't aware of how popular it was. I feel like we were right on the cusp of it being really popular, but that was a life-changing trip. Obviously, I'd never lived in a vehicle before like that, and I was just a little like naive and underprepared. And as much as I loved it, I do think I was a different person back then, and I remember complaining a lot too. Like, if I did that now, gosh, I would just thrive in that environment. And not to say I didn't enjoy myself. That was an amazing, amazing trip and such an important step on where we got to where we are now. So we did that before we even did any camping in Arizona. So we did the van trip in Iceland. We've been camping throughout Arizona, loving camping, like been to so many different places like Sedona. Edge of the World is stunning. I know I've talked about that in a previous video. We've been to Utah multiple times, Zion National Park, Bryce Canyon, the Canyonlands, Moab, Arches National Park, and then there's another one that I always forget the name of, but I will put on the screen. Another beautiful park. Utah is gorgeous. We've been to California. We didn't camp there, but we have been to California multiple times. So many beautiful places to camp around here. So in 2020, during the pandemic, I think a lot of us kind of stopped in our tracks and really evaluated what we wanted in this life. That's when I got a lot of the ideas that I now share on the podcast. And that's really kind of where I had another spiritual awakening, I guess you could say, or just really deepening in my own awareness and consciousness, which I share on the podcast, Alignment Adventures, all the stuff there. But another thing I realized then was I really want to try out van life again. Like, I discovered van life on YouTube. I hadn't watched any van life YouTube videos until 2020. So I got into those videos and I was like, Steven, we got to do at least another van trip and see if this is something we want to do, because I'm very intrigued. I think on some level, my inner child has always loved tiny living in vehicles. I used to love watching RV videos on the Travel Channel, and one of my favorite shows growing up was The Wild Thornberrys.
I'm Eliza Thornberry.
I just wanted to be Eliza Thornberry and travel the world in their Humvee. It just was one of my absolute favorite shows. So we booked an anniversary trip 1 year after we got married to travel in a van in the Pacific Northwest. And hands down, that trip has been my favorite trip, vacation, adventure of all time. Like, I did not want it to end. I did not want to get out of the van. We called her Vicky the van because there's a whole Twilight theme there. We wanted a Twilight tour and soft works and La Push, and such a beautiful part of the country besides all the Twilight stuff. Just a beautiful, beautiful part of the country, and I did not want to leave. I wanted to live in that van forever. So after that, we knew that we wanted to do that more permanently and on a more long-term basis. It's actually not too long after that I got pregnant with Arlo, so I was like, okay, I still want to do this, but obviously you've got to put it on the back burner. So that trip was in 2021. This year, or I guess it was last year, in 2022, Stephen found out that his grandpa, who has had an RV for many, many years, actually multiple different camping vehicles, but he's had an RV for a long time. He decided he wanted to sell his RV. And of course, we were like, please sell your RV to us. We are wanting to do this. And as much as I love van life, I feel like an RV might be better with a baby. So we have bought Steven's grandpa's RV. That happened back in I guess the whole purchasing or decision making happened back in 2022 in the fall. And then this month in May 2023, we have been packing up. We are flying home beginning of June 2023. And we're going to spend a few months in the Midwest fixing up the RV. Steven's going to add solar and a battery pack and all that stuff. And then middle to end of July, right before Arlo's birthday, we are full-time going to be living in the RV. Like, we are renting out our place. So we're not selling our place. We're keeping it. We're renting out our place. We're quitting our jobs. I am so grateful that we're able to do that. And we're doing the full-time RV life. Like, I am living Eliza Thornberry's life. Not really. I can't talk to animals, at least not in that way. We probably all can talk to animals, but maybe not in the way that they perceive it on the show. And I'm just so grateful for this opportunity. I'm so grateful that we're able to do this, that we've been saving our money to be able to quit our jobs. And, also we have the income from the house. And it's just going to be such an adventure. And obviously I'm going to share as much as I can on here. But unlike my first major decision where it was just like a gut knowing and there was like a deciding of this is what we were going to do, this more like slowly built up. And I knew it was something that I wanted to do, especially after our Pacific Northwest van trip. But you can see the synchronicity in the flow, like things kept flowing to us. So I want this to be an example to you that whatever you are trying to manifest, or maybe you're feeling called to do something very strongly, like I did with moving to Arizona and now us quitting our jobs and living in an RV full time, maybe you feel that nudge and know that things are coming to you. Sometimes it can happen really fast, like it happened really fast with my move to Arizona. But this RV planning really has been a few years in the making. And, obviously we looked at RVs to buy or vans to buy on the internet, but like getting Steven's grandpa's RV was so synchronistic, has flowed so well, and is going to be the perfect vehicle for us and what we're trying to do. So I hope this can be an example for you to remember that, like, the things you are manifesting, I talked about this in the podcast episode where I update you on all the things that you are desiring you too. Like, you are a magnet for those things and they are looking for you too. Like, don't give up on those manifestations. Don't give up on those dreams. The how is not your job. As Abraham Hicks said in the workshop that I went to a few months ago, you're not the stage manager. You're not the law of attraction. The how is not your job. Your job is to set the intention and just stay in alignment and stay as high vibe as you can. And when those low vibe emotions do come up, because man, do they come up when you make a huge life decision. I've been navigating that the past month more intensely, but really for a while now. When they come up, feel it. Like, when you feel anxious, feel it. When mind stories come up, allow them, but be aware that that's not your truth, that is a mind story. And when you try to like shove it down, that's when things get dicey. That's when things can get stuck. That's when you're not feeling your feels. That's when you might be like bypassing something. So feel your feels, but then just come back to your truth. Come back to your breath. Come back to this present moment. And remember why you are doing the things you are doing. Remember that intense pull you feel in your body. I always feel it in my gut, but maybe you feel it somewhere else. To go and do that thing that you're feeling called to go do. Like, just trust. I think that is what's so important in these situations when you're doing something really scary, is just trusting in yourself. I always think of that quote. I like pinned it and like probably had it as my background that few months that I was moving to Arizona, but it says something like, that moment when it feels scary to jump, that's exactly when you jump. You just have to surrender and trust when it comes to making these big life decisions. And that's why I talk so much about listening to your internal guidance and learning how to tune into your internal guidance, because I think it's a really important skill to learn how to hear that voice and discern that voice inside yourself, because the mind has a lot to say about these situations. Oh man, my mind has been going crazy. It's felt like a serious crazy person lives inside my head the past few months. Just because I'm trying to be as present as I can. I'm so excited for our adventure. Like, my mind would just skip ahead to that moment when we are in our RV driving down the road if it could. But that's not how it works. And, a big part of my message is being present. And I'm trying to be present in this last few weeks of our house, because who knows the next time we're going to be living in a house full time and I can take a really long shower, or we can have our separate rooms or have as much space as we want to. So I've really been just trying to enjoy the gifts that having a house gives, even though I'm also really excited to be nomadic and to drive our house to different locations and open the door and see beautiful scenery, or maybe open the door and see a Walmart or a Cracker Barrel, because that's a reality of RV or van life too as well, or a rest stop. We stayed at a rest stop multiple times. So I'm so excited, but I'm also trying to be really present. And sometimes I feel like my body too, with all this sickness, is just like all over the place as well. So this is my reminder to you, with so many other things. Hopefully this is good inspiration to go and do those scary things if you're feeling the nudge, but also, like, the present moment is just a breath away. I've been saying that a lot recently, and that's what I remind myself when I'm feeling super anxious or like just worried about like what's going to happen, because we are quitting our jobs. Like, oh, what are we going to do for money? I mean, we have a plan, but like long term, what am I going to do? Like, I would love to keep doing this full time, but I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to share as much as I can, but I don't know what's going to happen with that. And my mind is going nutso, not knowing. but I also know there is so much beauty in not knowing the future. And I really like being surprised. Like, that's another thing that's happened in my time here in Arizona, which go and check out that podcast episode if you want more details on what I've learned and how my life has changed specifically in these 6 years. But basically, everything has changed. And I've done so many things that I never would have guessed in that moment that I decided to move to Arizona. The things that have transpired, I would have never guessed that I would be doing those things, that I would have started a podcast, that I would have changed careers, that I would be a huge camper, that I'd be moving into an RV, that, all these other things that have transpired. I could have never guessed those things. So, as much as my mind doesn't like the unknown, I know that's where the beauty and the magic lies. So, I'm really practicing my trust and know that even though these are topics and things that I talk about all the time on my channel, on my podcast, that it's still hard and I still have moments of doubt and moments of unalignment, and that's okay. I think that's part of the experience. I know that's part of the experience. We're in Earth School, as many people have talked about, and we're here to experience it all. And I'm just very grateful and excited for the classes I'm going to be attending in Earth School. I'm so excited to live out some of these things that I've been dreaming about. And please subscribe if you haven't already, because I am still going to do yoga flows and meditations, but I'm also going to be sharing our travels in the RV with a 1-year-old. I'm going to be sharing as much as I can while also still being present. I just wanted to come on here and update you guys, even though I've been updating on the podcast. I know this is a different space, and my hope is always that those two things complement each other, like the content on the podcast and the content on the YouTube channel complement each other. There's overlap, obviously, but I want to cover things here that I don't always cover in the podcast, like a deeper inside look to my life. So I just wanted to share those stories. They were really fun to reflect back on my move here to Arizona, and I'm really proud of myself for following my internal guidance, for following my intuition, and making these big, scary moves. And again, if nothing else, I hope this inspires you to start tuning into your internal guidance more. I have so many resources on this channel. Go back and look at some of them if you need to, and reach out with any questions. Share in the comments any questions you have about what we're doing, any questions about tuning into your internal guidance, any ways I can help you with that. And sending you all so much love, all the high vibes, and I will see you in the next video.